The Five Bloods is exactly what you would expect from a Spike Lee joint. It has social commentary, political commentary, human commentary, graphic images, so sit back and listen to why this Netflix original is absolutely worth your time. Now, before we get on with our review, we do want to ask you guys, if you like our videos, to please subscribe and like our videos and share them with everyone you know.
The Five Bloods is Spike Lee's latest joint, and this movie follows the journey of 4 African-American men who returned to Vietnam to uncover the remains of their commander, Stormin Norman, played by Chadwick Boseman, who appears in flashbacks to serve as the conscience for these 4 men who are also there for an ulterior motive, which is to search for gold.
There's gold in them hills.
Yeah, so back when they fought in Vietnam, they found all of this gold and they decided to bury it, right? Mm-hmm. And later come back for it.
Yeah, and it's what these 4 black soldiers feel is owed to them and also to blacks in American society, reparations as they call it.
This is a very dense movie with a lot of allusions, not only allusions that Spike Lee kind of segments throughout the movie in like quick snapshots to make these connections to different situations involving African American experiences, events, famous people, a complete demonstration of the history of African American experience related to brutality, related to the Vietnam War,
exploitation,
but also to films, because that's why I love Spike Lee, is because he knows film history and he shows it so well in this movie with the allusion to Treasure of the Sierra Madre. In that movie, you have the story of these men also searching for gold, and then you have that same line, that famous line appear in the movie.
We don't need no stinking badges.
We don't need no stinking badges. And then, of course, there are clear allusions to Apocalypse Now. Yeah. For example, the composition of Ride of the Valkyries.
Ride of the Valkyries,
yeah, by Wagner, right? A lot of Easter eggs in there, and that's one of the many reasons why I think this is an important film, a relevant film, a film that is brutal, fierce, in your face, and definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, you talk about being in your face, and going back to the beginning of the movie, like you said, it is very obvious that this is not just a jab at racism in America. It is a total haymaker punch, guys. The first act of this movie, for me, felt very much like a history lesson. Maybe some parts I hadn't been aware of before, but also things that I had known in the past growing up, and it was just a refresher, right?
They showed you, for example, like a picture of the first black man to die during the Vietnam War.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's one of the great things about this movie, is that it really is, as much as it is about racism as it applies to African Americans, right? There are so many aspects of racism explored in there, like institutionalized racism and intraracial racism and systemic racism, right? But also, it's a Vietnam movie told through the African American experience, or the African American lens, which we haven't seen before.
I appreciated this film on so many different levels, not just the African American struggle in America or during the war. I love the fact also that they went into the psychological aspect of being a soldier. For example, they mentioned, they showed a couple scenes of Hanoi Hannah, not the actual live footage, but they had an actress, and she was someone who in North Vietnam would give these radio broadcasts trying to demoralize the Americans by giving multiple broadcasts a day, reading these prepared letters prepared by the government, and just trying to get the soldiers to basically feel like they're not fighting for a cause and for a country that really supports them. So again, back to your point, so many different layers and levels of this movie.
Yeah, and that's one of the many history lessons provided in the movie, mixed in very well with the fiction, The allusions that are brought up really like enrich the story very well. Yeah. This movie belongs to Delroy Lindo.
Absolutely, yes.
Who plays Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, if this guy does not receive accolades, nominations, there's gonna be hell to pay. There's gonna be a riot.
Yeah.
Because man, this man steals this show. I mean,
yes.
He is commanding in every scene that he's in. There are so many layers to his character because he is deeply inflicted with PTSD.
Yep.
You don't fully understand the depths of his issues and his problems, and they just keep adding on.
They showed how a guy, and you see this a lot in society, people, they stay away or try to avoid certain confrontations or certain situations because they know it can trigger them. And they show what happens when he's pressed and he gets triggered, and then he eventually starts to devolve throughout the film. film. And again, it also talks about dealing with fatherhood, which a lot of soldiers dealt with coming back. Not just with maybe having children with Vietnamese ladies, but also with just having children in general around the Vietnam time. So he had a very complex character. His little mannerisms when he was starting to lose it are perfect. Perfect. He threw everything into this role.
Yeah, and he was, like you said, he was scary at times, and then at times you felt sorry for him.
I did.
And you were hoping that he would like make the right choices and change for the better, and then he regressed.
There's a scene where Paul is going through the jungle, and he has one of his many monologues, in fact, where he's almost looking directly at the camera and speaking to the audience. And his descent into madness is very reminiscent of Apocalypse Now.
That kind of gets into the territory of my weakness, and that is that I felt just a few times in the movie where I felt it was a little manipulative and a little too preachy with the emotional aspect of it.
Okay.
Like it went a little bit too
it's very heavy.
Maximum overdrive a little bit.
Yeah, very heavy-handed.
But nonetheless, I feel like those scenes were still powerful and arresting and really spoke to the morality tale that the movie is.
I kind of felt like it did fill its 2.5 hour length. It's very dialogue heavy, especially in the first maybe like hour, I would say. Then after that,
there was quite a bit of exposition. Yeah.
And there were times where, I kind of felt like the narrative structure of, it's a historical documentary mixing with the movie, that kind of like pulled me away at times, in and out. So
which makes sense.
I'm being kind of picky, but I'm trying to let you guys know it's
like
not
the
a
mixing of
movie.
that, but it makes sense because Spike Lee has directed some documentaries, so it would make sense that he would mix that in. But I can tell how it clashes a little bit, right?
Yeah. What did you feel about Chadwick Boseman?
I felt like maybe I wanted to understand a little bit more of his character in the film, but I knew that he was simply like the catalyst for the other four men,
right,
and their journey and their story, right? He wasn't like
just crowbarred into it just because he's Chadwick Boseman,
Yeah. Spike Lee is a master of technical achievements in film. The aspect ratio, which is used masterfully in the movie as like transitions to indicate maybe, a difference in time period, or maybe an illusion is being presented, documentary style. But the aspect ratio as a transition was really well done. Not to mention the flashbacks, right, to the actual Vietnam War.
Right.
The total look of the film changed, right?
Absolutely, yeah. He did a really good job of mixing the different tints of, like you said, the aspect ratio, and you could really tell when it was a flashback, and it drew you.
Look.
Yes, it drew you to that era. And speaking of drawing you into that era, the soundtrack was very on point. When I think about the songs, I think about the songs of the 1960s and 70s, especially Marvin Gaye comes to mind. They really feature that prominently, especially in the second half of the movie. They're juxtaposed against what's happening in terms of their brotherhood and being splintered or trying to stay together as brothers. So again, very well selected, purposeful music. The striking, bold images, whether it's pictures or video footage, like you said, it really hammers home the themes in this movie. My God, there were some graphic scenes and some videos where I was like, oh God, like I was visibly making faces and I was cringing. Lastly, just want to throw this in there, I thought they would do some de-aging on the soldiers in the flashbacks, and they really didn't. So that was kind of weird for me. I mean, it was like these old guys back when they're supposed to be young guys. Again, being nitpicky, but had to throw that out there. So like we said at the beginning, this is a movie that you definitely should watch. And for that, I'm going to go ahead and give this 4.5 reels out of 5. For me personally, I would say this movie worked more as a history lesson and a social commentary rather than just a piece of entertainment. But hey, overall, its bold messages and its historical perspective definitely make it worth a watch.
I couldn't agree more. This is definitely going to be in my top 5 favorite Spike Lee movies of all time, now that I've thought about it.
Yeah.
I was really floored last year or 2 years ago maybe when Black Klansman was released. I remember seeing that movie in the theater, and this movie had the same impact. Even though I didn't watch it in the movie theater, it really did emotionally resonate with me. I found it compelling throughout. I was never bored. I enjoyed the historical allusions. I enjoyed the acting. Everything is golden about this movie, and I think that his ties to Black Lives Matter make it a must-watch.
How about a real rating?
Oh yeah! I'm gonna agree with your rating. 4.5.
Oh, okay.
4.5 reels. Yes, I forgot about that. That's important.
Yes, the real
too.
screeners need to have reels.
Real ratings.
Okay, you know what else?
Real takes.
What we also need to have, guys, is we need to have your comments down below. Please, as always, we love your conversations. Let us know whether you agree with our ratings or whether you feel like this movie was maybe a bit too heavy-handed in certain aspects.
Don't forget to look us up on social media. We're on Facebook at Real Screeners, Instagram, real.screeners, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy our reviews, and stick around for our next Real Take on Movies.
Human commentary, graphic images. So just go ahead and sit back, listen to what we have to say about your mama. Just sit back. So sit back. Okay, sit back. So sit back and listen to why this Netflix. Yes, I got it.
The Five Blood. The Five. Man, it feels so funny saying that. The Five Bloods is. The Five.
And his descent into madness is really reminiscent of Apocalypse Now. Wouldn't you agree?
Yep. Definitely. Yeah. Yep.